Under the fluorescent light, N'Golo Kanté collapsed to the floor reading a letter, and no one knew that letter had been hidden there since 2015. The locker room was empty. 11:47 p.m. Stamford Bridge. Everyone had gone home hours ago. Teammates showered and dressed, coaching staff in their offices reviewing match footage, security making rounds through the silent corridors. Just N'Golo Kanté remained, sitting alone on the bench in front of his locker, untying his boots with the same methodical precision he brought to everything. Late-night training session. Extra work. Always extra work. That's how he built everything, not with talent alone, but with the hours no one saw, the discipline no one filmed. He opened his locker, and a letter fell out. Not from the shelf. Not from his bag. It fell from behind the metal backing, from a gap he never noticed before, fluttering down like it had been waiting years for exactly this moment. Kanté caught it instinctively. His hands that had intercepted 1,000 passes, that never fumbled, that were always exactly where they needed to be, froze when he saw the envelope. Yellowed paper. Creased edges. His name written in handwriting he recognized instantly, though he hadn't seen it in 8 years. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The locker room was silent except for the distant sound of a cleaning crew somewhere in the stadium, the echo of a mop bucket on concrete. Kanté's fingers trembled as he turned the envelope over. No postage. No address. Just his name, N'Golo. And in the corner, a date, May 2015. Kanté didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. But let's rewind. To understand why a letter from 2015 could bring N'Golo Kanté to his knees in an empty locker room in 2023, you need to understand what happened 8 years earlier. May 2015. Leicester City. King Power Stadium. Kanté had just finished his first season at SM Caen in France. He was 24 years old. Nobody. A player who'd worked his way up from the amateur leagues, who'd been rejected by professional academies as a teenager because he was too small, not fast enough, not strong enough. But Leicester City's scouts had seen something. Something in the way he read the game, the way he anticipated, the way he never stopped running. They offered him a contract. £5.6 million. For Kanté, who'd been making less in a year than some players made in a week, it was impossible to comprehend. He flew to England for the medical. Alone. His English was broken. His agent had stayed in France. Kanté carried one small suitcase and wore the only suit he owned. The same one he'd worn to his father's funeral 3 years earlier. At the King Power Stadium, a groundskeeper found him standing outside the players' entrance at 6 a.m., 2 hours before his scheduled arrival. "You lost, son?" the groundskeeper asked. His name was Thomas Webb. 63 years old. He'd worked at Leicester for 42 years, since he was 21, maintaining the pitch through relegations and promotions and everything between. "I am early," Kanté said in halting English. "For medical." Thomas smiled. 2 hours early. That's either very professional or very nervous. Both, Kanté admitted. Thomas made him tea in the groundskeeper's office, a tiny room beneath the stands that smelled like cut grass and machine oil. They sat together while the stadium woke up around them. Thomas asked about France. Kanté asked about Leicester. They didn't talk about football. They talked about fathers. Thomas had lost his the year before, Kanté 3 years earlier. "My dad used to tell me," Thomas said, stirring sugar into his tea, "that you can always tell a man's character by how he treats the people who can't do anything for him. Not the managers. Not the scouts. The cleaners. The groundskeepers. The kit men. The people who make the club work but never get the cameras." Kanté nodded, understanding more from the tone than the words. "You seem like a good kid," Thomas continued. "I hope it works out for you here. And I hope, when you're famous, because my gut says you will be, you remember this conversation. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding." Kanté passed his medical, signed his contract, started training. And he did something no other player at Leicester had ever done. Every morning, before training, he stopped by Thomas's office. Just for 5 minutes. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes Kanté just helped carry equipment. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence drinking tea. The other players thought it was strange. Why was the new French midfielder spending time with the groundskeeper? But Kanté didn't care. Thomas reminded him of his father. The same quiet dignity. The same pride in work done properly. The same belief that character mattered more than glory. The 2015-16 season began. Leicester was predicted to finish dead last, relegated immediately. Kanté was predicted to be a decent squad player at best. What happened instead was history. Leicester City won the Premier League. 5,000 to 1 odds. The greatest underdog story in sports history. And at the center of it, running more than any player in the league, intercepting everything, was N'Golo Kanté. He became famous overnight. Every major club in Europe wanted him. Chelsea paid £32 million in July 2016. Kanté left Leicester after just one perfect season. The day he cleaned out his locker at King Power Stadium, Thomas Webb was there, leaning on his rake, watching the circus of cameras and reporters. Kanté found him after everyone else left. "I wanted to say thank you," Kanté said, his English much better now but still soft, still humble. "For the tea. For the talks. You're going to do great things at Chelsea," Thomas said. "But N'Golo, can I give you one last piece of advice? Please, don't forget who you are. Success changes everyone. But the special ones, the really special ones, they remember where they came from. They remember the people who believed in them when they were nobody." Kanté promised he would remember. Thomas handed him something. "Open it later," he said. "When you need it." It was a letter. Kanté tucked it into his jacket pocket, hugged the old groundskeeper, and left for London. And then, life happened. Chelsea. Another Premier League title. World Cup with France in 2018. Glory. Fame. Endorsements. The whirlwind of being one of the best players in the world. Kanté stayed humble. Everyone said so, but the pace never stopped. Training. Matches. Travel. Interviews. The jacket he'd worn that day got packed away. Then moved. Then stored. Seasons blurred together. And the letter, Thomas Webb's letter, got lost in the chaos. Until tonight. 2023, 8 years later. When renovations to the Stamford Bridge locker room uncovered a gap behind the metal backing, and a maintenance worker found an old jacket stuffed there by accident years ago, and pulled out a yellowed envelope, and slipped it back into locker number 7 without reading it, figuring the player would want whatever mail had been forgotten. Kanté sat on the locker room floor now, under the harsh fluorescent lights, and opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter was written in Thomas Webb's careful handwriting. "Dear N'Golo, if you're reading this, it means you've made it to Chelsea. I'm so proud of you. You earned every bit of it. I'm writing this because I know what happens to good people when they become great. The world pulls at you. Everyone wants something. And it's easy to forget the version of yourself that used to wake up early and drink tea with an old groundskeeper. I'm not worried about you becoming arrogant. That's not who you are. But I am worried you might lose the joy, the simplicity, the reason you fell in love with football in the first place. So I'm giving you a challenge. No matter how famous you become, no matter how many trophies you win, find one person at every club, someone who works behind the scenes, someone nobody notices, and treat them the way you treated me. Learn their name. Drink tea with them. Listen to their story. Not because it will make you a better player. Because it will make you a better man. And on the days when football feels like a job, when the pressure crushes you, when you forget why you started, come back to this letter. Remember that kid who showed up 2 hours early because he was nervous and excited and grateful just to be given a chance. That kid is still in there. Don't let him disappear. With all my respect and affection. Thomas Webb. P.S. I'm battling cancer. Stage 4. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel obligated to stay. You have a life to build. But I want you to know, meeting you was one of the great joys of my final years. You reminded me why I love this game. Thank you for that. Away from the cameras, Kanté made a choice no one expected. Kanté read the letter 3 times. The paper shook in his hands. Tears ran down his face. N'Golo Kanté, who never showed emotion on the pitch, who absorbed provocation and insults and kicks with the same calm expression, was crying alone on a locker room floor. Thomas Webb had died in January 2017. Kanté had been at Chelsea for 6 months. He'd never known about the cancer. He'd never gotten to say goodbye. He'd never known this letter existed. 8 years. The letter had been lost for 8 years while Kanté had played and won and traveled the world, never knowing that the man who'd welcomed him to England had given him one final gift. Kanté pulled out his phone. His fingers hesitated over the screen. Then he opened his contacts and scrolled to a name, Marcus, kit manager. Marcus had worked at Chelsea for 19 years. He prepared Kanté's training gear every day. They'd exchanged maybe 50 words total in all the years Kanté had been at the club. Kanté typed, "Are you still at the training ground? I'd like to talk if you have a moment." The response came quickly, "I'm here. Everything okay? I'll come find you." And Marcus, "Do you drink tea?" Kanté stood up slowly, carefully folding the letter and placing it back in the envelope. He looked at his locker, the boots, the jerseys, the equipment of a world-class footballer. All the things that made him successful. But none of it mattered as much as what he was about to do. He walked through the empty corridors of Stamford Bridge until he found Marcus in the kit room, sorting training bibs for tomorrow's session. "Mr. Kanté?" Marcus looked surprised. "Is something wrong with your gear?" "No," Kanté said quietly. I wanted to talk. If that's okay. I realized I've worked here for 7 years and I don't know anything about you. And I think that's wrong." Marcus blinked. "You want to talk? To me?" "Yes. Thomas Webb taught me something important. It took me 8 years to remember it. But I'd like to start now, if you'll let me." They made tea in the kit room. And Kanté listened while Marcus told him about his daughter who wanted to be a doctor, about the knee injury that ended his own playing career at 22, about why he still loved working in football even though he'd never made it as a player. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. The next morning, Kanté arrived at training 2 hours early. He found the groundskeeper, a woman named Patricia who'd worked there for 12 years, and asked if she wanted help marking the training pitch. She thought he was joking. World Cup winner N'Golo Kanté offering to help drag corner flags and paint lines? But he wasn't joking. They worked together in the early morning silence. And Kanté asked about her life, her family, why she chose this work. He listened with the same intensity he brought to reading the game, complete focus, genuine interest. Word spread quietly through Chelsea. Kanté was doing something strange. Arriving early. Staying late. Spending time with the people usually invisible, kit managers, cleaners, groundskeepers, cafeteria staff, physio assistants. Not for cameras. He specifically asked that no one film it. Not for publicity. Just because. When journalists asked him about it months later, after a security guard mentioned it in an interview, Kanté simply said, "I had a friend once who taught me that how you treat people who can't help your career shows who you really are. I forgot that lesson for a while. I'm trying not to forget again." The letter stayed in his locker. He read it before every match. Whenever the pressure mounted, whenever football felt like obligation instead of joy, he would sit alone and read Thomas Webb's words. And he kept the challenge. At every club, every training camp, every tournament, Kanté found one person behind the scenes and made them visible. Learn their story. share tea. Listened. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. In 2024, Kanté traveled back to Leicester for a charity match. While he was there, he visited Thomas Webb's grave. He brought flowers. And he brought something else, a framed photograph of himself holding the World Cup trophy in 2018, with an inscription on the back. "You taught me that greatness isn't about trophies. It's about remembering who you are when everyone is watching, and who you are when nobody is. Thank you for the tea. Thank you for believing in a nervous kid who showed up too early. This trophy belongs to you too. Golo." He left it at the grave. No cameras. No announcement. Just a private gesture of gratitude 8 years overdue. The letter that fell from his locker in 2023 had been lost for 8 years. But its message, its challenge to remember joy, to value people over glory, to stay human in the machinery of elite sport, that message found its way home. N'Golo Kanté, one of the greatest midfielders of his generation, continued to arrive early to training. Continued to drink tea with groundskeepers and kit managers. Continued to prove that real strength isn't about dominating opponents. It's about remembering who you were before the world knew your name. And choosing to stay that person anyway.